Tonight, March 9th, 2021. As always, before we get underway for the City Council meetings, we bow our heads for a moment of prayer. Could you bow your heads with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here. We thank you for the break in the weather and the refreshing time we get to get out, get some sunshine and some fresh air. Now, as we gather this evening, please give us wisdom and insight that we can care for those people who are looking to us to make wise decisions. Lord, give us insight into what steps we should take, the decisions to be made, and mostly with our words and our actions and our attitudes, encourage and build each other up. We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let the record show that all members of council are present this evening. Would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would like to, unless we have any objections, move the study session that was scheduled on our usual agenda for the end of the meeting after legislation and move it up to the beginning here, allowing Ms. Mack to come and speak with us and get that taken care of so she can get back to her family. Are there any objections to moving the study session to the front? Without any, we will start our study session. Ms. Mack.
Hello again, everybody. 2 weeks in a row, I feel very privileged to see you all again. Okay, so we're back to discuss the Dora and Revitalization District proposed expansion space again. After last week, I realized I was not near as prepared for all of you as what I would have liked to have been. So I created this fancy schmancy PowerPoint for all of you. The only problem with that is technology is not always our friend. So if we have any issues with this, we will do the best that we can. So all of you watching at home, I promise we'll figure it out. Those of you in the room, could possibly be a little bit of issue, but we'll get it figured out. So what I'm going to do is I sent some emails out. I reached out to other communities, did quite a bit of additional research this week. So I'm going to go over all of those pieces with all of you, a few new maps, a few new talking points, and then obviously at any point in time, any questions come up, any comments, please do interrupt me so that while we're talking about it, we can make sure we're talking about it at the right point in time. So here we go. Maybe. I gotta be very slow with this mouse here. There it is.
Is it only on the one?
Yes, it will. Lisa will move the other one on this one here. So so we'll get both of them up and running at the same time. So this current map here is the current boundaries of our Dora space. So just as a reminder, this is the current boundaries that we exist in right now. So from the Purple Heart Bridge south on Clinton Street to the south side of Seymour Way or Don Miller Drive. And then east and west, each direction a few ways, following the boundary of both the Maumee and the Auglaize rivers, including the Fort Grounds, including Triangle Park, including 5 different liquor establishments that we have currently. We do know there's other licenses that are available within the district. They are just not in use at this point in time. So that's the current map there. It comes up on Washington and down Wayne. And it is on the opposite side of the street of St. John's Catholic School. So just, again, kind of a variation there. And oh, come on. We'll get it. Eventually. There we go. I would hope that I could just click and it would do its thing, but we're not going to get that lucky. Okay. This map here is a little bit of a better view of the new proposed boundaries. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to put my mask on. But so the area that we're looking at expanding here would be to the north over the Purple Heart Bridge including what would be called Sensory Effects Park, and then Pontiac Park. Over the East 2nd Street Bridge, Kingsbury Park, excluding the pool space as well as excluding the ball diamond, which would be up here. I didn't do it. One more. There, nope.
What?
It's
It's
touch
got its
screen.
own mind.
It's
But
having,
you know what, your clicker, your
It's stuck.
arrow's on your, there.
it's doing its
It
own
was on
thing.
the, going ahead.
Let's see if it will. Oh my god. Oh, it's like there's a ghost controlling it.
Or- or-
Technological advances in this
Okay.
room take place one step at a time,
I like it.
as we all know.
Okay. So, Kingsbury Park excluding the pool and the ball diamond, and then over the East 2nd Street Bridge, then to the south to Hopkins Street, including that grassy area there, as well as the buildings there along East 2nd. And then this southern region here, which would include the Domino's Pizza Plaza, D-Town Food Market, and then Depot Park up to the viaduct space, which was a good breaking point. So that's just a little bit of a better description, a better visual to be able to see where those boundaries are. Yes?
So currently, the Domino's, the Defiance Physical Therapy are not
That is
within our door.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so again, just a basic description of those pieces of the expansion request, and I will go into a little bit more depth as to what we were looking at while doing this concept. So again, to reiterate, the Domino's Pizza, Defiance Physical Therapy, D-Town Food Market and Oasis, and Depot Park. This was not a space that we included in the very beginning. It was not a space at that point in time that we had thought there would be any reason to include. That building where D-Town exists currently it did not have a commercial kitchen. So when you looked at that concept, it did not make sense to go any further than the back side of the 1918 building. Now that the owners have done a lot of work in that space, it does make more sense to expand into that space and to include them for a possible expansion opportunity, maybe with a liquor license. Because currently they are also not in the revitalization district. So that would be another piece to add, is that these boundaries exist exactly the same both sides. So if they would be interested in one of those liquor licenses, they could not currently contact the state for that. They are not in the boundary. So then let's discuss north over the Purple Heart Bridge to include Pontiac Park and Sensory Effects Park. So again, Sensory Effects Park would be that west side of the bridge, that small, nice little grassy area where there's some park potential, some really neat conversations have happened there. Oops, sorry, I should probably move it. Hold on. Okay. And then obviously to the east would be Pontiac Park. One of the things that I did fail to mention last week was I did meet with Metro Parks, who owns a large portion of that space. And we did discuss this potential expansion. And they actually did create a resolution for the approval for the expansion of this space. So they are in support of us doing this, obviously bringing the support back to you all as the final choice. But speaking to those landowners, the resolution, I believe, is in your Dropbox. It is something that can be reviewed, and any questions from Metro Parks, I would be happy to do my best to answer those. Also, we can reach out to them for any questions there. Again, a lot of the focus was on riverfront development, looking at that natural resource. I've used this statement quite a bit through this presentation because, again, one of the things that we have talked about many times over is our rivers, the benefit of our rivers, why we need to focus on the rivers, and why they're so special. Using this connection from the downtown district to our parklands only benefits our downtown district, our confluence, our parklands, et cetera, et cetera. So when we start talking about that extension between the downtown and the riverfront, let's start looking at it as one connection. It's not two separate locations. There are so many different things that make that connection better with the improvements of the Purple Heart Bridge. So obviously we all remember, because it has only been 2.5 years, it feels like a million, but 2.5, since the bridge had been improved. So those sidewalks were much smaller. We didn't have the bike lane for the additional safety space. So there weren't as many people walking casually over the bridge. They were using it as a transportation. Now, with the increased sidewalks, with the increased bike path, with the walk lane underneath, the sidewalk extension underneath the bridge between those two parklands, we're creating a lot of benefit for that extension of downtown concept. So again, we're not looking at it as two completely separate spaces. We're looking at it as one complete destination location. In addition to the bridge, there have been so many riverfront improvement projects. How many of you heard as people were driving down River Road, they got to Pontiac Park and they called and said, "Oh my gosh, I can see the river." We got a lot of those calls. When that started happening, there were so many people so excited they could drive down River Road and physically see the river. That was a big deal. That was a great piece to add to our riverfront development, people wanting to use the space more visibility for the rivers to know that they exist and why they're so important to our development of our community. And then again, to reiterate the conversation we've had with Metro Parks, the approval for the usage and the support of expanding into that space that is owned by them and everything else. So there was a lot of those things that I wanted to just reiterate the importance of the connection between downtown development and our riverfront. They really don't have to be completely separate. They really can be looked at as a comparative piece.
I have a question.
Yes.
I guess I'm understanding what you're saying.
Mhm.
I don't understand why it's important to include the parks into the expansion. I mean, you haven't answered that. I mean, is it because somebody's able to walk around with a cup of beer? Or is that what's important? Because the parks are already in this community. They're already part of our downtown. They're already part of our development. The Metro Park is there. Why would the designation of this be inclusive of the Dora and important? I guess I'm not catching that yet.
I would say right now where the boundary sits, there are a lot of the things that we do even as our organization when we look at downtown. We look at so it would be the south side of the bridge as our barrier. We don't look outside of that barrier when it comes to promotion. We don't look outside of that barrier when it comes to any event usage, any just general purpose to promote what we have. So as we were looking at this space, and again, the conversation of riverfront, et cetera, instead of creating another barrier, another reason for people to stop at that space, let's open it up. Open it up, and Spanky's is right there. That is a great opportunity to use Spanky's. And again, one of the conversations we've been having is 95% of the time, you're gonna get a drink from Spanky's, and then you're going to walk over to Pontiac Park, and then you're going to stay there. You're not gonna walk back to Spanky's and back to Pontiac Park, and back to Spanky's and Pontiac Park. So this is more of a walkability piece to where you have the opportunity to walk again along the riverfront, to use the river swings, to see kayaks, floating along the river, boats and pontoons, et cetera, some of just opening up an opportunity.
Yeah, the opportunity is still there. The only thing comes down to it is the inclusion won't change what are the restrictions. It's still a park and it still excludes alcohol.
Absolutely, and it does currently exclude that, absolutely.
What would change that?
By the approval of this, it would be allowed to use those cups to be able to walk through the park, to have that within the parkland.
Is that right, Jeff?
That if you create the expansion of the district, that would be correct.
They would walk through the park
Well,
with alcohol?
if we have laws that say no alcohol, we're obviously gonna have to, address that issue. But if you expand that territory to the parks, what you're doing is you're giving approval for that to obviously, have alcohol. Now, if we have a ordinance or we have laws on the books, obviously we would have to change that, and Sean can probably speak to that better than I can. But having signs posted no alcohol and then having an actual ordinance or law, we would have to go back and modify that.
Yeah, Mr. O'Donnell.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. President. We do have that ordinance, Jeff, that prohibits the consumption of alcoholic beverages in parks. However, we also have an exception in 52907C7 that explicitly gives the people the permission to consume alcohol in any area, parks included, covered by a door. I'd probably recommend that you clean that up
Right,
so that you don't have conflicting ordinances.
right.
But there is that exception contemplated in our code.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Corbett.
I just want a clarification. You said that 95% of the people are gonna stop at Spanky's and take their cup and go over once and stay. Where did you derive that percentage from? Is that fact or just kind of a guess?
I would say it's more of just experience from how we've seen the Dora being used over the last year and a half. It's more of a strolling kind of thing, especially if there's not an event going on. Let's say Busker Fest was going on. There's more of an opportunity that they're going to go to the establishments more than once because they're within that area. If they're walking through the downtown, they're stopping at one establishment one time and continuing on their walk and then finishing their walk after they've disposed of their cup outside of the district.
So you're just making that assumption it's gonna continue the same way, rather than people coming back and forth or driving back and forth, which I hope they don't do because that's an open container violation.
That is correct. That is absolutely something
So now
that cannot happen.
We're creating that temptation if we open it up that far.
And I would say no matter what we do, the temptation of an open container does create any kinds of those types of questions. We had a lot of those kinds of things coming up a year and a half ago as well. We have not seen any of those things happen.
We haven't got them out of downtown yet, though. That hasn't had to be a problem. It's all, which is what this was originally designed for downtown
Right,
revitalization.
right. And I think one of the points that we would like to continue looking at is the parks are just an extension of the downtown. So when we're talking downtown, it's those connections of those riverfront parks and the necessity to keep having that conversation about why they're an important connection. Because if we don't do that, the usage of the parks are going to keep being exactly as they are, and they won't continue growing just like our downtown district continues to grow.
Mr. Waxler.
First of all, I still have a problem with having alcohol in Kingsbury Park with the pool and the kids there. You got a
Absolutely.
playground there, you got a pool there. I don't think we're setting a good example having people sitting around drinking at that location. So I'm totally against Kingsbury Park. If they wanna go to them buildings, which you think they're gonna do something with across the road, none's ever lasted in them buildings in 50 years, 60 years I know of. I don't think anything's ever gonna go there, but maybe you see something there I don't. But the other thing is like Joe said, we're getting away from downtown. I know you keep saying we're trying to make it bigger, but we're basing everything on alcohol to grow our revitalize our downtown, and I don't think that's where we want to be known as. You know, go to Defiance because you can drink and walk all over the place. I don't think that's what we want to do.
No, absolutely. And it's definitely not creating that, I guess, I've been using this lack of a better term, but the drunken district. That's definitely not the direction we're looking to create by any means.
But if somebody walks from downtown to the park,
Mm-hmm.
if they're gonna just be drinking, they're gonna want more than one beer. They're not gonna walk back and forth. they're gonna have a cooler or something and just keep filling that Dora cup. I see that happening.
Well, and I would say that if there's the opportunity there, we haven't seen it yet happening.
But we haven't been in the parks where we haven't allowed alcohol. The only time we allow alcohol there is, the thing I've ever been down there for was like the jazz festival. But they had permits, they had, I can't think of the group that does that.
Correct.
But they have, everything's fenced in, so nobody, the kids, nobody can get to the river. And we're not gonna have any of that,
Right.
so.
So and I will definitely go more into Kingsbury Park as we continue with this. And again, it's just more of that looking big picture as the potential. We have seen the demographic that have been enjoying Dora being the ones that are getting the 1 cup or the 2 cups within the district and disposing and moving on. It's not, in our minds, we're always looking at the what ifs, which is definitely appropriate. We want to look at the what ifs. We want to look at the worst scenario possible and prevent it. That's our goal. But that is a 1% out of another 99%. Again, just an assumption.
But my other part of this whole thing is, you know, we're wanting to revitalize downtown, and that's great. But our merchants still have never got on board. You know, you can go to Perrysburg in the summer, they have ice sculptures, but everything down there is open on Saturdays and Sundays and in the evenings. Grand Rapids. Our merchants aren't willing to put anything into this. I mean, they don't stay open in the evening. I remember when downtown was packed on Friday and Saturday nights. Everybody's down there walking around. But nothing's open now. You know, you got Meeks and the coffee shop and Kistner's and bars. That's all you really got open in the evenings. And then the weekends, there's nothing to do downtown.
Yeah, and that's absolutely one of the
Then I don't
pieces that
think
we're
alcohol's
working
gonna
on.
help that.
Yep. You know, and we can't control all of that.
I know, but the merchants gotta be willing to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I know the antique store spends a lot of hours open. They're open a lot, you know? But, you know, there's just nothing to do down there in the evenings and, but
Yeah.
until the merchants decide they wanna all get on board with this, I think we're kind of beating a dead horse.
And I think we're looking at other ways to incorporate Dora, the music, all the things that we're doing to encourage them to say, look at all the things we're doing, look at all the things everybody's enjoying. There is now a reason for you to stay open. Hence the reason we're doing a lot of the things that we're doing.
Mr. Resty?
Again, just to follow up, you know, Steve says Kingsbury, I say Pontiac, and we have a big event that's coming up with the, if they allow it to have the 4th of July fireworks or whatever, and all of a sudden you have families that go down there and sit down to enjoy. If we open this up and all of a sudden we loosen the idea that a person can have the alcohol there, you have a person with a 12-pack next to a family here that's trying to enjoy themselves, and they're enjoying themselves too. I guess right now they can't do that. If you have an event, they can petition for the event, like what Jeff said earlier, and basically cordon off an area for something that's secluded and basically private. But I don't see where all of a sudden you have a mixture of the two with the catalyst being alcohol in a public setting like the parks.
We've already had this discussion with the police department, and for the fireworks, we would suspend Dora within all of the parks and outside of the downtown space. There would be no reason at all. There are certain events such as fireworks, such as the Halloween parade, that we do suspend the sale of Dora, and we work with all of the establishments during that span of time to say there are 2 or 3 days a year where it is just not appropriate to have this as a part of it, and everybody's in support of that, they understand it. The rest of the year, it's much more, it's not event-based. So the creation of Dora was not created event-based. We looked at more of an everyday casual use as somebody is strolling through the area. So during fireworks, it would not be permitted to be able to take a Dora cup within that space.
The other part to that is that I guess in promotion, which is where you're at, in promoting the downtown and the areas and whatever, I think that's a good, something that's good where you're reaching out to those that want to come to our community, have an event or whatever, that all they have to do is make it a simple application if they do want to enjoy any of our parks for their festivities.
Mhm.
I mean, that's always been there. If this does not go through, that's still gonna be there.
Absolutely, and none of the events would change. Most of the events, the way they're created, none of them would change. Jazz Festival would not change. All of those other ones, they would not change that are already existing in the parks. There are other events that could possibly benefit from having Dora within the parklands that aren't currently either in existence or ones that could maybe change the way they have done things in the past.
So why can't we wait until that comes up, and then at that point, if there is dramatic changes with something that's proven, then at that point, it might be a good idea at that point to present it to us and say, this is what's taking place. This is something that can benefit us greater.
Mhm.
It's a greater reach out, those types of things. But at least we have something that's an ABC that we can look at and say, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
But I can't see it at this point. I mean, I'm not in favor of this, the changes. Unless I have something that says that there's a necessity for it. I've not seen it yet.
And I have spoken to, again, multiple communities, and one of the communities that expanded their Dora into their parkland, they have events that are based in their parkland right adjacent to their Dora area. That is the main space for a lot of their events. So obviously it made sense for that to be able to be included. When I discussed what we were going to discuss tonight, again, we discussed big picture. They have created 4 new events because of the space that is open for Dora. Dora takes a long time to expand. It's 3 readings here, maybe depending on the state, 6, 7 weeks. We don't know. It could be a week, it could be 7 weeks. We could miss an opportunity for activities within the parklands if we don't have this. That there could be that opportunity. Again, not currently, but maybe this spring, maybe this summer, maybe next summer. We don't know until those opportunities do come to fruition and an idea does come to the table. Maybe some people will choose to create things within the space if it does exist. If it doesn't exist, nobody's looking at the space for possible opportunity.
No, the big thing is being receptive. And I think that's what we're trying to say. I'm receptive to it, but I just don't see it at this point.
Sure.
If you show me something that would make me change my mind to include this and make that dramatic shift, that'd be great.
Sure.
But I just not seen it. I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I don't see it at this point.
Yeah, and I would say we are looking into the future. And hopefully those things will be purposeful in the future.
Mr. Engel?
First of all, I think it's a good idea. We're talking about Dora getting into parks. That's the only way they can drink down there, right? Through the door in the parks.
Yeah,
Minus
they have
the
to use a
event
special
Right.
event permit, yes.
30, 40 years ago, and Jeff remembers this, you could go to any ball field and it says no alcoholic beverages, and it's in a park. And they're sitting there, they're drinking on the benches, and you can go down to Kingsbury. I'll just bet you, anytime there's a big party down there, they can hide it. It's not there in broad daylight. But if they police that enough, you'll have people drinking down there all day long. And I don't see where there's a big deal of having that, but it's gotta be policed.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. And when I spoke to Chief Schaefer, that was one of the things we discussed was definitely summer, spring, more police presence as they're driving through. They already do a great job, but just more driving through, making sure it's being used appropriately and that we're not pulling coolers out and doing things that we shouldn't be doing.
And I know during the summer, you go out to Bronson, they got the stuff out there, and I've been involved with it too. You'll go out there, you'll have dinner, be with a bunch of people, you'll have a beer, or whatever you're gonna have. You'll have a mixed drink. Could be hard to stop, but I don't see a thing wrong with it to at least go forward with it, see how it works. If it doesn't work, we can amend it again, so.
Yeah, and that's another good point, is that this can be amended a second time.
My opinion.
If this were to go through, there is the opportunity to then scale back. If we see major issues we could easily come back and say, okay, here is the major issue. The reason we're bringing it to you is we do not foresee any direct major issues that could cause the reason for us to not bring it to the table.
Mr. Waxler?
I got two things there. First of all, you said you can only expand this once or twice.
2 times, yes.
Okay, now we don't even know what's gonna happen with the 1918 building, so I really think that that's something we gotta keep in mind when we're doing all this.
It is already included.
I know that, it is included, but we
Yes.
don't know what that's gonna do for downtown either. But the other thing is, you just spoke about, things that wanna happen, you want things that can come up and go in the parks. Everything that could go on in them parks, we want downtown. We moved a car show downtown, we moved a jazz fest downtown. That's where you want this stuff, cause that's where, we close off streets, it's not a big deal. So I don't know why you wanna take them, what we're trying to do now and bring it all downtown away now and put it back out where it was.
Well, and I wouldn't say to take, the Jazz Festival is at Kingsbury Park,
Well, yep, they moved it down on
only because it flooded.
3rd Street, but it was a lot better setup there.
Well, but they did not believe that. When they moved it to 3rd Street, it was a very difficult layout. It didn't work out well for the musicians, it didn't work out for the staging. The protecting the
parking lot,
boundaries
so-
was difficult.
With all of our parking lots and everything, why could we not make that work for them?
It was the location where they chose. So it was over by the Strady.
Yeah, I
And
knew
so
where it was, yeah.
it did cause some logistical issues. Now, mind you, it had to be done in 3 days because of the flooding issue that happened.
Right.
It was not foreseen, it had to be done very quickly. I only know because I was very involved
Right,
in
I
moving all
know.
of that, so, but it is preferred at Kingsbury Park. They like the space, the shade especially.
But there again, that's one of them that has the permitted alcohol. They
Correct.
have everything fenced in where the
Yep.
people, so we're not stopping anybody from doing anything in the parks they can't do, they wanna do.
Absolutely,
All they
with
gotta
the
do is
permitted process,
Come and get a permit and
absolutely.
do it.
Yep.
We okay then.
Yep.
But then we got more safety guidelines, cause then we have fencing, we have a lot more things involved in it than just saying, here, go down there and drink beer.
Right. One of the communities I spoke with, one of the benefits of having Dora within the parklands is that you don't have to have a separate event permit. You don't have to do the boundary. I don't know if any of you have purchased snow fencing. It is extremely expensive. Putting it up, kind of a pain. You have to get the large stakes to make sure you don't hit anything, and it's going through. Sometimes you have to have oops come in. It's a process. When you look at actually having to go through in a parkland space and make sure you're putting the things in where they
Well,
belong.
we've already done that with the Jazz Festival, we've done it with the stuff over in Pontiac Park, we've already done that. So we got the snow
Absolutely.
fence somewhere.
Well, but not everybody has access to it. That's
Well, we would have to make sure they had access to it if it's our parks they're using.
not necessarily, because it's that organization's job to take care of all the logistics. If they choose to have something that they would need to put up snow fence, or fencing, I guess per se, within that space, it is not the city's job or anybody else's job to make sure that they have that available. It is their choice to choose that location and have those amenities. It is their responsibility to cover those logistical situations. We have to do it for Ribfest. When we do all of the
Yeah, I know.
boundaries, we bought the snow fencing, we did, the setup with the Lions Club and the police department for the metal
I
barricades.
put trailers all over town.
Trailers all over the place. All sorts of people that we have to call in at 11 o'clock to come move them. Absolutely. So all of those logistical pieces fall within the event organizer's expectation. So if there were to say there's a art and craft fair that shows up that they want to hang out at Pontiac Park and they want to set up there, but they don't want to go through the permitting process, they don't want to go through creating the beer tent, any of those things, all the easiest thing for them to say is, we're within the DORA district, make sure you're checking out the DORA approved establishments as you're checking out the event. You can get your drink, you can stroll. That is really the purpose of this, is the strolling piece.
But people's not gonna go to the Jazz Fest and walk up here and buy
No.
6 door cups and carry down there and sit and listen to jazz.
Correct. It would not specifically be for the Jazz Festival or any of the other events. Now, Lilac Festival obviously will benefit from it. because it's much more of a strolling type event.
So if this passes, does the no alcoholic signs come down?
Well, I guess I've got a question, and
Yep.
and that's one of the things that I kind of want to make a comment about. If you have a Dora cup, which is required
It is.
in the necessary zone, right? Then that alcohol must be contained within that cup, right? And Sean, maybe this is more of a question for you, which means that in terms of alcohol, because I think your concern about, well, people are going to bring coolers, and I think maybe Mr. Uresti had the same thing. I think you kind of want to make it work, but you can't find that place where it can work. And I don't disagree with you, because I think these things require a little bit of control. So my question, and maybe this goes to Sean, is, okay, if you have a Dora cup and you have a 6-pack of beer in a cooler in the park, is that a violation of the code?
It is.
Okay, so that means that you are not going to set out in the swing set at Pontiac Park with a cooler and having a 12-pack of beer. That means that what you're going to do is you're going to contain that alcohol in that cup. So the control is within the cup. It doesn't give you the right to have a cooler there in the park.
I know that.
Okay, well, I want to make the point. However, now what happens is people generally will keep their alcohol in the car, and they're going to go to the car. Is it a violation to have alcohol in your vehicle in a park?
It is. It's no different. None of this is any
Police
different
don't
than
jump.
Okay.
bringing your flask
Who's gonna
inside a
police it?
licensed bar.
Well, I think that, no, I agree, because we had the same conversation when we started to establish the DORA in the first place. Where are the abuses going to exist? What's going to happen if somebody fills their cup with a beer they put in their pocket, and so on? And at this point, and it's early, because we haven't had the district established all that long, plus we've had COVID. I mean, I don't know that you can know for sure, because maybe it just hasn't been established long enough for those abuses.
Right.
And that's the only comment that I want to
Yeah,
make.
I don't know
You
either, like-
can control it. You can control it by obviously policing it, or, if you see some activity that's out of the norm. And just like if you wanted to take your alcohol to the furthest point south, or whatever it is right now, yeah, I don't see people walking with a Dora cup at the southernmost boundary. I think I see them either sitting downtown on a bench or going into a store, or, So I think the point is that you can have some control if you police it, and I think it hasn't been established long enough for us to really see those abuses.
Mr. O'Donnell?
One thing I would add to that, Mr. President, is I have confirmed with the Assistant Law Director, Mr. Essex, we have had no open container violations with the Dora cups in the year and a half that it's been in existence. We've had plenty of open container violations, but not with the Dora cups. And in fact, we've had no criminal activity at all involving the Dora that we know of. The second thing I'd tell you is that 4301.82 requires you to review the districts every 5 years and decide whether you're going to renew them or not. So if you say that everything in the city is going great, but man, I really hate that Dora district, you can get rid of it. You can pare it back. You can do what council thinks needs to be done to get control of the situation if you need to.
Does that be 5 years, or can you do it at any time?
You can do it sooner than the 5 years, but it has to be. It's mandatory 5 years. You certify that it's either renewed or you pare it back.
Mrs. Crutch?
I know that with the Busker Fest, I could see where Pontiac Park would be kind of an added extra more than Kingsbury. I know that went as far to the Purple Bridge. There was a young man that was sitting there playing, but I could see where more musicians might be over at Pontiac Park and being able to walk over there. I don't see it more going to Kingsbury because the kids were playing and, you couldn't hear the music, whatever those people were playing. I have no problem with it as south, and I have no problem with going across the Purple Heart Bridge. I have more of a problem with the Kingsbury area because of the kids, and seeing that. I like the idea of the fireworks not having it, but I also know that we're pretty naive to know that most of the people at the fireworks, I have their coolers there anyhow, so we're kind of naive on that one. But, I agree with Steve as far as the Kingsbury Park, maybe just having it one extension and maybe waiting on the Kingsbury area. But that's just my opinion.
Any other questions for Mac?
Okay, hold on, let me see if I can get this done.
Now you can go on.
Oops, if I can not change the random color here. Okay, so east over the East 2nd Street Bridge. So discussing Kingsbury Park and the grass or the parkland from East 2nd Street to Hopkins. Again, focusing on that natural asset with the rivers and the confluence. I know there's plans to take down some of the excess brush there along the riverfront at Kingsbury Park. So again, a better view of the river from that space. Again, we've discussed the economic development opportunities with those buildings. Yes, Mr. Wexler, I do agree that we have not had a whole lot of success in that space, but that doesn't mean it will not happen. It doesn't mean it will never happen. With the expansion of Dora, with the expansion of the revitalization district, it could be the final push that we need for something to happen there. I cannot foresee into the future. I cannot say this is definitely going to happen, but by creating these opportunities, at least there is a chance and a marketable piece that I can work with my colleague back here sitting
Big question.
Yes.
Can them buildings be tore down? You can't rebuild there, can you? That's floodplain.
What buildings are?
The old ones where all that stuff
Where
was
Aristotle
piled.
had his stuff.
I don't think that's in the
If
floodplain.
we take the FEMA money and tear them down with those federal funds, yes, then we cannot rebuild them.
But
If
can
we- if
somebody
just-
buy them now and rebuild? Because they're in a floodplain. I mean, they flood underneath all the time.
I don't know that they're in the 100-year floodplain. I'd have to check on that. They might be in the 500-year.
No, they flood there quite often, so. I mean, I've seen it, but when it comes up, when it gets to the dry cleaner's driveway, it's under them buildings.
Unfortunately, the member of Board of Control that would know firsthand is in a webinar right now.
Which is a problem.
So again, possible opportunities for those things that, we are all fully aware that those buildings would need a lot of attention and some TLC. But again, I'm aware that one of them at one point recently does have a commercial kitchen because there was a restaurant in that location. So again, potential for some of these opportunities that could possibly happen. The discussion of the playground, the children's focused activities, et cetera, et cetera. I absolutely agree. I think the one piece that we have to look into is a lot of the demographic of the parents who are using, or parents or grandparents even, that we have already seen that are using the Dora. Again, it's not the ones that are necessarily letting their kids run amok, for a lack of better term at this point. We've seen many families with dogs and strollers grabbing their Dora cups and strolling through the downtown. So ideally, that would be what the intent would be. Get one drink and you end up at Kingsbury Park, especially currently on how the locations are laid out. By the time you get to Kingsbury Park, it would be time to dispose of appropriately. Sorry, my mouse is going crazy again. Okay, I did send out an email to all of you and just asked, why or what questions can I help you understand? I think we've gone over a handful of these currently, but I will just reiterate again, why include the parks at all? Again, that downtown district connection and looking at it as one whole is ideal right now. Again, we've talked about riverfront development for 30, 40, 170 million years at this point. There's a lot of great plans sitting in my office that I keep looking at going, man, it's probably time to get those boards redone, but we don't want to redo the boards if we don't have real plans. So it's looking at those plans, it's looking at some of the potential for what the rivers really can be and saying, this is what we're really focusing on in connection with the downtown district. Again, you have to purchase a beverage from a downtown business before you can go to these locations. So it's that economic development piece and using those businesses prior to going to some of our confluence parklands. And then it's the destination marketing piece. Mr. Uresti explained the promotion and marketing piece that we do. One of the things that we focus on a lot is downtown, is the city, but it's not directly on the confluence. We need to get better at that. We need to encourage everybody to get better at that. And that's our natural asset, is the confluence in the rivers.
Why don't you tell them about your new stickers and whatever,
I can
because
do
that would include.
I can do that. So the perception committee, I don't know if it's been sent out yet to all of you, but we worked on some branding, logo work, et cetera, and a new tagline to use outside of the addition of Defiance, a great place to live. That's the municipality branding logo. We wanted to do something different for the big picture. So it's now one of the things we're going to be using for t-shirts and mugs and hats, et cetera, is Defiance, where friends, families, and the rivers meet. 100% exactly who we want to be. We can all be a great place to live. That's great. One of the things that we talked about when it came to branding was what's unique. A great place to live. That's wonderful for us. But where friends, families, and the rivers meet is Defiance, Ohio. Because not many other people can say they have a confluence very adjacent to their downtown district that they can use as their destination marketing piece. So again, it all really is starting to tie together in the bigger picture. Other communities that have city-owned parklands. So Hudson, Ohio, I spoke to them, Powell, Ohio, and Greenville. So really quickly, because I know it's taking a lot of your guys' time this evening. Hudson, Ohio, this is their map. In red is their city-owned parkland. The one that would be on the furthest right for everybody was one of the locations I discussed earlier. They had actually initially discussed not including the city parkland space, again, because of the no alcohol within the space and all of the additional things that they wanted to not have happen. They started looking at the detriments of not including the space. They do have a festival that is held within, so it's the top half of the right side. And there was always a lot of issue with their beer tent and having to put up the fencing within the park. There were a lot of people that would get upset. It became an issue. And so they said, let's take it all down. Let's open it up. Let's add this space and let's see how it goes. They ended up having that, I believe, that event back in 2019, because obviously nothing happened last year. And it went very, very well. So there are those 4 spaces there that are included that are city parkland that they have had no issues, again, with excessive drinking, with any refuse issue, with people openly not following the rules, et cetera, et cetera. This is Powell, Ohio. Again, really nice map. I gave them a lot of props on how easy it was to read. The green space there on the middle bottom, that is Village Green Park. So that is their city-owned parkland. Again, a lot of the concepts of do we include it, do we not? And ultimately, as we include it because it is a part of who we are. We want people enjoying our parkland, and theirs is very centrally located. So they did decide to include that, and again, have had no issues, no refuse, no extra garbage, no out of control people. And then this one is interesting. So this is Greenville, Ohio, and I'm gonna point really quick. So this space, so all of their establishments are located within this space, -1, which is right here. So if you look, this is very comparable to kind of what we were looking at for that additional space between where our final establishment would be, and Pontiac Park. So they included, oh, I can't be this tall, this entire area up here, because there is one business up here in the very top corner that has one event a year that would benefit from being within the Dora district instead of having to have the addition of a beer tent, et cetera, et cetera. They were unfortunately not able to have that event last year, but are very happy with including that space, even though they know it's going to be a little bit of a walk. But it is included so that that space does not have to spend the additional funds and go through the process to add that beer tent, which it's not their main focus of the event. Is the wrong message being sent regarding alcohol being put in the parks? Now, mind you, again, just to reiterate, special events can still happen. We are still allowing it for special events and different kinds of things. And again, the overall usage is for casual. It was not based on events solely. This is more everyday use, Monday through Saturday, as somebody is strolling through the area and hanging out with their dog, hanging out with their mom, and walking through our downtown district, which is what we want them to be doing. We want them to get out of their cars. We want them to walk on our sidewalks and see the businesses that we have available, the establishments, the art that we're creating, et cetera, et cetera. The alleys, the arches, all that fun stuff. And it's creating this an opportunity, not as a detriment to the parks. We're not downplaying the need to not include alcohol within the parks. It is something that we need to all keep an eye on, but it is not something that we need to look at as a detriment. We can look at it as a major opportunity for our community. And then the current parks within the Dora boundary, I know it's technically not a city-owned park, or not yet, but working on it is Triangle Park. Music in the Parks, which is run by the Defiance Community Cultural Council, purposely spread all their parks out for many, 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 many years. They have 4 events a year. They've gone UAW, Triangle Park, Riverside, Kingsbury, Pontiac, they've been all over. Next year, purposely, they will all be at Triangle Park because of having the Dora opportunity. Minus the one that was over at Riverside with that band, they have never seen the number of people at their events that they have when they brought it to Triangle Park with the Dora opportunity being available. And then just really quickly, additional points of interest since the initial approval in the summer of 19. Again, to reiterate what Mr. O'Donnell said, no recorded incidents per DPD, no major refuse issues, minus the first weekend, but we got that figured out. Everybody was really excited, and we didn't have trash receptacles in the appropriate locations. We took care of that immediately. The Defiance community and all visitors have been following rules, regulations, and the expectations because, again, we do not have any recorded incidents. The establishments have been extremely appreciative, a lot of very positive response, and then feedback has been overwhelmingly positive across the board. We've heard, a few things like, oh, why does alcohol have to be involved in everything? To be honest with you, I agree. I wish that didn't have to be a part of every conversation, but I'm also a realist. We do these things as an opportunity. It's not a requirement. It's just an opportunity. And then obviously, what other potential opportunities could occur? We've talked about the Tridge for a long time. We've talked about riverfront development. We've talked about additional restaurants coming into the downtown district. We've done a lot of great work down at Augley's. What things can happen? We don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but we have an opportunity to open things up and say, we are welcome for these opportunities. Bring them here. We want to make this stuff happen here and not anywhere else. And that's just a pretty picture. So this is what we're looking to continue to improve. Are these spaces here, because you can see the downtown in the background, you see the bridges, it's a great walk. We want people to walk, we want people to exercise. Here's a great way to get people out and moving. I have no idea what time it is. I'm so sorry I talked for so long.
Oh, do we have any follow-up or final questions for Ms. Mack?
No, thank you for adding those other cities.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
it was great talking to them. They had a lot of really interesting ideas and pinpoints, and again, we're all on the same page. All of our communities are looking at things like this. One of them is doing Yappy Days. So keep an eye out for Yappy Days in Defiance, where we encourage you to bring your dogs and grab your Dora cup and walk through the district. So again, we're not the only ones thinking of things that could benefit our downtown and our adjacent locations. A lot of places are doing it. I think we're number 23 in the state. They're now up above 65 approved. That's not counting the ones that are still pending. So we were ahead of the game. Let's stay ahead of the game if we feel like it is appropriate.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Lisa, I don't know how to get out of this now.
You go ahead and give it to me.
Okay. Now I don't know what to do.
I'll get it going for you.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Any wrap-up comments? Okay. With that, I've reviewed the index minutes for the March 2nd, 2021 City Council meeting. Do we have a motion to amend or correct these? Without, I will approve them. Do we have any liaison meeting requests or reports? And do we have any comments from council? Mr. Waxler.
Yep, I brought it up with you last year, and I just noticed it the other day, I was out by there in the dog park. That parking lot is full and everybody's walking across that road to go walk on the trail.
Yeah, you were asking about I think a pedestrian.
Something there, I'm afraid somebody's gonna get hit there. I mean, they're just walking, I mean, there's a lot of people using it right now. Of course, it's been nice, you know, but the dog park was clear full and all people were walking the plank.
I need to get back in touch with the engineer, but I think that could be a problem, putting a pedestrian walkway there. And unless we have these beacons, like you see, the flashing beacons,
Yeah.
I think that we would probably have to do that, but let me double check with her.
I think maybe we all maybe try to do something there,
Yeah.
just let people know that there is crossing there. I mean,
I think if we do this, I think it's gonna require like a beacon signal for
that's why
pedestrians.
I think we want to maybe try to do something there. I
Yeah,
don't know
I'll follow up with her.
I know we can't do what we did down on the other two crosswalks, but something maybe just to let people know there is people crossing the road there, especially in the summer, and you know.
Thank you. Mr. Crutch, Mrs. Crutch.
The Whirler trash bins that are going to be put out during the Clean Up the Parks Day,
You mean the dumpsters?
the big dumpsters,
Yeah.
Do they have a time that they arrive and a time that they pick up? And can anybody use those dumpsters? Because it said something in the paper, like if you have big trash pickup, you shouldn't have to use the dumpsters, but everybody in
Well, I
town has
think
big
that
trash
it's
pickup.
open to the public. I mean, if you have a dumpster in the park, I don't know exactly, I have to go back and look at the time frame.
Mhm.
But that dumpster will be there and anybody can put their trash in.
And it will be at, what, Bronson, Ladies Grove?
3 parks, I think.
Just 3?
Ladies Grove, Bronson, and
Kingsbury?
Kingsbury.
Yeah.
So not the east side one, the new one?
No,
Ordeal.
not at this point. Usually big 3.
Yeah, okay.
Or maybe it's Deal they use. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll find out.
Oh, deal maybe.
Any other comments? All right. The mayor is in the meeting right at the moment, and so he tagged me to read from Ms. Hauk's class book a quick story. Kids. Haley writes, I want to be a phlebotomist when I grow up. My community helper is important because they will draw patients' blood and make sure they're healthy. Phlebotomists use a needle, medicine, pencil, computer, and many more tools. Phlebotomists wear scrubs and a mask so they don't get germs. Not what I expected when a grade schooler decides what they want to be when they grow up, but apparently Haley wants to be a phlebotomist. But that's what's on my desk. Just in time for the Board of Control. Mayor McCann.
Thank you. We haven't read any yet that said they wanted to be mayor or city council president either.
I haven't seen any of those, no.
Wasn't really expecting. Just got off the annual health meeting with various government subdivisions from across the county recommended or represented. It was a good meeting. Jamie Gherkin did a nice job with her report, updating us on health in general and COVID. And then also Ron Klinger gave a report on septic systems, which is actually kind of gross, but nonetheless, we went through that. And I think that's all I have, sorry. I wasn't expecting to be here.
Well, I shocked you at the last second.
Nope, that's okay.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes. Just to give council a heads up, I have prepared a letter to go out to businesses concerning the snow and sidewalk removal and those kind of things. And, you know, I know that as we've gone through the winter months and the heavy snow, we always seem to have those businesses and even residential housing that has its challenges when it comes to snow removal. Just to let you know that a letter will be sent to businesses. That will probably be sent again the next fall when the winter months coming up to make sure that we're reminding those folks to please remove the sidewalk or the ice and snow from their sidewalk. So we'll be sending something out soon. I want to say within the next couple of days. I think we've looked at it. That will be going out to businesses, and then that reminder will be sent in the fall. And I will tell you that I think we'll take a bit more aggressive approach when we don't see these things complied with. And rightfully so. I think that our hands are tied sometimes. It's very difficult, so we're just going to enforce the law. And I think that certainly the reminder that's being sent out now and then in the fall, another reminder, I think that that's pretty good notification that please take on the responsibility of your establishment and keep the sidewalks clear. So I just want to give you a heads up in case you hear something. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request a motion for an executive session to consider the purchase of property for public purposes if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest. Madam Clerk, that's Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22 G2.
So we have a request for executive session this evening. Do we have a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Mr. Engel, second. Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
All right, before we adjourn this evening, we'll have an executive session.
And rewind the tape here, please. I would request a motion for an executive session to consider the purchase of property for public purposes if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest. Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22 G2.
I was actually just about to ask. Only one, and they.
You'll have all these memorized by the end of the year, Mr. President.
And do we have a motion for this second executive session?
So moved.
Mr. Engel, second, Mr. Waxler.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
And lastly, as your lawyer, I know that we just had a study session, which our rules define as presentation and formal discussion, deliberation, and debate of matters requiring a concurrence of counsel prior to preparation of legislation, and that's Rule 12.1 subsection 11. I guess I'm just looking for some direction from you. Is there a desire for me to draft a specific ordinance or legislation? Or would you rather I do nothing? It's up to you either way.
Do you have any requests or suggestions?
I'd say go ahead and draft it, just like it was presented.
So is that a
That's a
motion?
motion.
Yes.
That's motion.
Motion for the drafting of an ordinance in regards to expansion of the Dora district. Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast?
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
No.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
And Mr. Rusty?
No.
Okay, that's 5-2.
I have a question on that. Is that gonna be everything that's on the map, or can we amend it and stuff?
Well, that sounds like that motion passed. You can move to amend something previously adopted. That's more under Robert's rules. And make a motion to amend the map if you so choose, Mr. Waxer.
Okay, because I would like to make a motion not to include Kingsbury in that. Or Pontiac Park, I'm really I'm up in the air on, but I don't want, I won't back it with Kingsbury in there.
Okay, so just to help out and clarify, you're making a motion to amend the previously approved ordinance so as to exclude Kingsbury
Well, I
Park.
don't have a problem with going south to D-Town. I have a problem with the buildings over on East Second Street. I just don't want to include the parks.
Mr. Rusty?
I'll second that.
Right, second, Mr. Rusty?
Okay, you said two different things.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify, is that you're making a motion to amend the previously approved ordinance to exclude the parks. And just to clarify for Ms. Ellis, that would be Kingsbury, Pontiac.
Oh, you just said Kingsbury.
No, I said, I don't want the parks in it. I said, I don't have a problem going, the buildings at Kingsbury across the road, and I don't have a problem going south. I don't want to go to the parks.
Okay, I think the confusion, Mr. Waxer, there is some parkland or some bottomland going
That's what I'm
south.
saying. I don't know what you consider parks here, or, you know.
Is it just to exclude the Kingsbury Park portion?
I don't think we want in Kingsbury or Pontiac myself. That's my opinion. That's what I want to put in.
Exclude both of them.
What's that?
Exclude both of them.
Yeah.
Right. So Kingsbury, Pontiac, that's your motion?
Right.
And that's your
Just,
second?
Just those two, yeah, second.
Okay,
There is land that runs down Allglaze behind Mercury Cleaners.
That's what I'm saying. Is that
But it's
considered
not
a
a
park? I don't
designated
care
park,
about that
but you-
area.
you
That's
don't
not
care
where the
about
kids
that,
are and
okay.
stuff, yeah.
Parks.
That's what I was trying to say. I don't
Yep.
care about that over there.
yeah, and not to put you in a point, I just want to make sure I
Yeah,
understood
yeah.
what you're saying.
I didn't know if they considered that a park. That was my question, or was
Right.
it just green space or what it is?
And that it was clear with Mr. Rusty that that's what he was seconding, and it is, okay?
So it's just Kingsbury
In
And
Pontiac.
and Pontiac? And just for precision in drafting this, when it comes back 2 weeks from now, are you also excluding the Purple Heart Bridge in your motion, or are we including that?
Well, you don't need to go out on the bridge if you can't, or you don't put it in the park.
Okay, no, I just need to know so I know how to draft it.
Right, so we have the motion, we have the second.
Mr. Hancock?
No.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
No.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
No.
Mr. Engel?
No.
Mr. Corbett?
No.
So it will be, so Mr. O'Donnell, the original ordinance to be drawn up as the second, as the amended ordinance did not pass.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Wexler's motion did not
We
pass.
drafted to include the full
Yeah.
map as presented.
So the motion
that I made.
passed. The motion to modify it did not.
Right.
So with that, Mr. O'Donnell.
That's all I have for right now.
All right.
You can please.
Mr. Leonard.
I have nothing at this time.
Okay. And this evening, we have one item of legislation for consideration.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance approving and ratifying an exemption application and agreement for a tax incentive in the community reinvestment area number 3 between the city of Defiance, Ohio and Brad Schlachter.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you may recall, back on Tuesday, January 5th of this year, the passage of ordinance number 8272, which expanded CRA number 3, and then I'm assuming 8273 expanded CRA number 4, not to be confused. This particular legislation is about an exemption agreement, our first exemption agreement under our CRA number 3. Now that is a pre-1994 CRA, Community Reinvestment Area. And that means something to the economic development people, like Erica in the room, because, and she's here to answer all your questions, by the way, not me. Because you get up to 100% exemption for commercial and industrial properties. However, when there is a proposed commercial or industrial project, one of the things that section 3735.671 of the Ohio Revised Code, one of those requirements is that the developer, have an agreement, get the assent of all the school districts for whatever exemption level there is above 75%. So tonight you have before you an agreement between a developer, Mr. Schlatter, for a 90% abatement of real property taxes on the improvements that he's proposing to make on these vacant parcels along Agnes Street for 10 years. And then at which point he would go back to paying the full property taxes, including on any improvement that he's made. Both Fort County Career Center and Defiance City Schools Boards of Education have signed off on this agreement. It's now before you for final consideration before we send it off to ODSA.
Do we have any questions or comments for Mr. O'Donnell?
Is this where he's doing some work there now?
Yes, he's building some storage units,
Okay,
3 storage units.
that's what I thought. I knew he was doing something, so, okay. Thanks.
What kind of jobs is this creating? 2 jobs? Is that what they said?
When that question was posed, Mr. Waxler, it's my understanding, he said that there would be a clerical person that would manage the rental part of it and some light maintenance.
I just was
Correct,
wondering why the 100% abatement. I mean, I didn't know if it was a job creation or what it was actually.
Oh, yeah, it'd be 90% abatement on that.
Is this butt up to the playground? Agnes?
No, this is on the other side of Agnes.
Okay.
It's the other side of B&B Multi-Prime, behind
Gotcha.
Speed's Repair.
Okay.
He's already got 3 of them there now, right?
I'm not sure of the number, Mr. Waxler, but yes.
I counted 2.
2, okay,
There was one there, one that's been there for a long, long
Yeah.
time, that was part of the compost.
all right. No further questions, no spending call.
If we have no other questions.
Second.
We have motion to suspend and call Mr. Waxler, second Mrs. Crutch.
Mr. Corbett,
Yes.
Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Rusty,
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch,
Yes.
Mr. Engel.
Yes.
And we have a motion to adopt. Motion to adopt, Mr. Corbett. Second, Mr. Engel.
Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Rusty,
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch,
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And this ordinance is adopted. With that, and before we enter executive session, are there any citizens' concerns that were shared with members of council? Mr. Corbett?
Actually, I have 3 tonight, Mr. President, so we'll just start with the first one. And this is from, get the name, Krista Jones, 212 Catalina Drive. This is addressed to council. I do believe Defiance is a great place to live, and I support local businesses. I support efforts to further enhance our city, but I do not support expanding the Dora boundaries. That's from Krista Jones. I take this off because I can't breathe. And I have one from Teresa Molnar, and her address is somewhere here. And I can't find it. She lives over east of Ottawa, or no, I'm sorry, not Ottawa, but Cleveland. Please express that I'm against expanding the boundaries of Dora, especially allowing drinking in our city parks. Parks are for children and families. Alcohol should be in a controlled surrounding, and it was my understanding that open containers are illegal. Please, let's keep the law intact. Please try to stop this. It will only create unsafe environment for children and family picnics. Sincerely, Teresa Molnar, and it's 1304 Powellview Drive. And one more. This is from Brenda Woody. And I'll get her address because she put it at the bottom. It's 1540 Woodhurst Drive. And she addressed council. And I am writing this letter in regards to the proposal expansion of the Dora. In view of the potential increase in revenues, there are several negative impacting aspects of this proposal. The expansion of the Dora areas would increase the opportunity and probability of public intoxication, driving under the influence, alcohol, domestic violence, child abuse, property damage. Inhibitions of those intoxicated to the point of endangering other citizens is also reasonable to assume that if this is proposed expansion, especially in our city parks, would not only encourage children to consume alcohol possibly before legally allowed, but would also compromise the safety of the children and families. If there's no monitoring of how much one can indulge, why would the aforementioned consequences be the result of such an expansion? I cannot perceive how expanding the adult refreshment district will enhance our city. All our citizens could be served in a more beneficial way by keeping alcohol consumption inside the business venues that offer adult beverages. In doing so, the safety of our residents would be maintained. Defiance is a great place to live. Why not offer more family-oriented activities and businesses to help increase our revenue? She goes on to say, I thank each of you for your service to our community. I respectfully request that this proposal not be accepted. Thank you, Mr. President. Those are the 3 citizens' concerns.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens' concerns that were shared with council members? If not, we'll stretch our legs for just a few minutes. We'll enter both executive sessions here in just a few moments.